Hi, this is Scott Dudley, and welcome to Funnel Fella Radio podcast episode number 17, where today we're going to be looking at using heat maps to boost conversion rates on landing pages. So, if you're spending money on paid traffic, then it's super important to be optimizing the page for maximum conversions to get the maximum response from the page. Obviously, that goes without saying. But the big question is, where do you actually start to improve your conversion rate? So a good way to start is to use web analytics tools such as Google Analytics, or what I use, which is Funalytics, to track and measure traffic and to also get a good grasp of the main important metrics. But while those do help with seeing what pages are performing best, and I guess what actions are being performed the most as well, they don't really provide a crystal clear picture on exactly how people are actually interacting with your website. And unless you're using the right tools to find out what is happening on your site, you're really only left with guesswork and hope. So, one of the benefits of using Hotjar is that they have a whole suite of these tools that you can get access to, and you can even start using them with a free membership as well. So there's really no excuse to be not using these sort of tools. And just to show an example of how powerful some of these tools can be, I wanted to run through an interesting case study with a company called Banner Snack that managed to use Hotjar to increase signups by 25%, and they also noticed a 12% increase in the overall usage of their tool. So let's jump over now to this page on Hotjar's website, which is basically their case study for one of their customers, Banner Snack. And the big issue that they were having was that despite all the tools they were using to measure traffic, they didn't really know what people were doing on the website or how they were actually using their product. So what do you need to do when you need to what do you need to do when you need to improve conversion signups for a tool and optimize the experience of people using it, but you don't have clear insight to point you in the right direction? So with this case study, the team at Banner Snack, that was the main problem that they were facing. So they had lots of analytics data, but they were in the dark when it came to understanding what people were actually doing on their website. Not only that, but also why they were doing it. So that's a good point, because analytics is fantastic when you've got lots of data. However, there's lots of things that the data doesn't actually tell you, that you can't really see just by looking at the data. That's what I'm trying to say. So Banner Snack is a company that has over 60 employees, and their big mission was to improve conversions on their website. So they're actually an online banner maker and a design tool that helps people create slick and professional looking banners and social media visuals in just a few minutes, which is an interesting concept. Um, and most of the team are already developers or UX designers, and they also have a marketing team of 13 people, which are involved with content, SEO, social media, email, PPC, etc. And then they're saying that there's different teams that relied on web analytics tools to track and measure traffic, but the issue was they didn't have as clear sense of how people were actually using the website once they got there. All right, so I've already covered that. And their major goal was to start optimizing basing on data, not assumptions, but we felt like we didn't have enough information to make our process shorter and more efficient. All right, so that's all good. One of the initial concerns, I guess, they had about adding Hotjar to their site was if it would actually slow the website down. And that's a very good point, because the more things that you add to a website, it's a bit like with WordPress when you keep adding plugins, but the more things you add to a website or a funnel, the more it's going to slow it down. And obviously some things will slow down the pages more than others. But after a while, they realized that it didn't actually slow the website down at all, and it wasn't really a big deal. They checked the load speed using the network tab from the browser's inspect element tool to see the load time, and it turned out to be okay. All right, so challenge number 1 was understanding how to optimize for conversions. And once they had a Hotjar set up and it was up and running, they placed some heat maps on the landing pages they needed to optimize. So just to reinforce what heat maps actually are, they're a powerful way to understand what users do on your website pages, where they click, how far they scroll, what they look at, and what they ignore. So if we just scroll down a bit here, there are different types of heat maps, and a heat map is really an umbrella term for different heat mapping tools. So the 3 types are scroll maps, click maps, and move maps. And knowing the difference is pretty handy, obviously, because that way you can investigate different aspects of your performance. So scroll maps show you the exact percentage of people who scroll down to any point on the page, and it starts off with red and then moves down to yellow to green to blue, where the redder the area, the more visitors saw it, because obviously that's at the top. And then click maps show you an aggregate of where visitors click their mouse on desktop devices and tap their finger on mobile devices. And then there's move maps. So move maps track where desktop users move and pause their mouse as they navigate the page. The hotspots in a move map represent where users pause their mouse, and research suggests a correlation between where people are looking and where their mouse is, which means that a move map gives you an indication of where people might be looking as they go through your page. All right, so that's just a bit of a breakdown on what heat maps are. But getting back to the case study, they're saying here that based on the data, the team would then produce an alternative design and A/B test the old and the new versions against one another. Through this testing cycle, the product team kept reviewing heat maps and eventually understood that all they needed to do was make the call to action button on the landing page bigger and add more contrast to it. So they showed the before and after versions. So the first version has the top above the fold area has like a dark blue background with a green call to action button. It looks like it says try it free is the button text. And then the new version that they created, they removed the image from the original version, and this time it was like an orange background with white writing, and the button was a white color as well, so there was more contrast, having the white button on the orange background compared to the green button on the dark blue background. And if you could actually, if you were watching the video, it makes a bit more sense because obviously you can actually see the contrast. But that was the big thing here that made a huge difference. And just by applying this change, they managed to increase signups by 25%, which is huge, especially if there's a lot of traffic. And if you actually look at the heat maps, you can see a ton more clicks on the new version with a white button on the orange background and not so many clicks on the original version here as well. So they wouldn't have known that which was performing better without actually setting up the heat maps and doing some A/B tests. So then the second challenge was understanding what numbers alone don't tell you. So the UX designers wanted to also understand how people were interacting with their actual tool, which is a banner making tool. So they set up some Hotjar recordings. So just to go into a bit of detail about what these recordings do and what they are. Session recordings are one of the best tools in your UX toolbox. If you want to see how people actually navigate through your website and collect insights to fix the user experience and improve conversions. So in a nutshell, session recordings are renderings of real actions taken by visitors as they browse a website. Recordings capture mouse movements, clicks, taps, and scrolling across multiple pages on desktop and mobile devices. Also known as session replays, user recordings, and user visitor replay tools. Session recordings are used to gain a real understanding of how users interact with a website and then helps fix issues, optimize the user experience, and ultimately improve conversion rate. So there's just some benefits about using the recordings. So if we move back now to the case study, Hotjar recordings came in handy when the team started noticing that their just launched timeline feature kept going unused by many of their longer standing customers. So that's where you can actually watch a replay of what the user is doing on the site. And they're saying here that after watching lots of recordings, they realized that the button to show the timeline option, which happened to be closed by default, was not quite as visible to the users as the designers had initially thought. So it was causing some friction. The fix was easy. The word timeline was added to a button that also got slightly repositioned. So looking at the initial version, it's just a very small, I guess you could call that a button, enabled timeline, and it wasn't really prominent. Then what they did was they changed it so that the timeline was a much larger button and it was a lot easier to see and it looked more clickable. And they're saying here that after adjusting the user interface to make the timeline features more visible, the team noticed a 12% increase in the overall usage of the tool. And at the end of it, the head of design from Banner Snack is saying that Hotjar has become an important part of our conversion optimization process, helping us understand our customer better and ultimately sell more, which is the goal of it, that's the whole point of it, obviously. They strongly recommend it. So, in summary, this case study is an excellent example of how useful it is to have an all-in-one optimization tool like Hotjar. But the point here is it doesn't necessarily have to be Hotjar either. There's lots of other options out there. Some other things that you can try are Zoho PageSense, VWO, Crazy Egg, and yeah, there's plenty more that you could also try as well. So it's not like I'm not saying that Hotjar is the only one out there. But so far from what I've tested, this is the one that I have liked the most out of all of them. But as usual with any tool, just be prepared to put the time in to see what is really going on in your funnel. And you should find the return on investment is huge with investing in an all-in-one optimization tool. So obviously it's going to cost you some money each month to continue using these tools, but the return on investment is absolutely worth it. And without using them, you really haven't got a clear idea of what's going on your pages. It's fine to look at analytics and numbers and graphs and so on and so forth, but you can't beat seeing actual heat maps and recordings of what's going on specific parts of your pages. So if you're not using it yet, then I highly recommend you at least give the free trial a run. And start using it for yourself, and then you can start to optimize your pages. So that's pretty much all I've got for today. Hopefully you enjoyed that, and I'll catch up with you next time. Bye for now.